I mean, when you walk through a field or a forest, you usually just look at nature as this entirely wild, democratic space.
Right.
Like a flower is just a flower.
Yeah, exactly. It's just there.
Right. It blooms because the soil, the sunlight, and the rain, they all created the right conditions, not because some committee voted on it or someone signed a piece of paper. Nature is just entirely indifferent to us.
Oh, absolutely. Nature operates completely outside of our human hierarchies. I mean, a poppy doesn't know it's a poppy, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't know what continent it's growing on, and it certainly has no concept of borders or, jurisdiction. It is just purely organic biology, doing what biology does.
But then, and this is where it gets weird, human beings step into that wildness. We point at something organic, like a tree or a bird or a plant, and we put this conceptual frame around it.
Right, we claim it.
Exactly. We say, that belongs to us. That represents our specific philosophy. And suddenly this simple piece of botany isn't just biology anymore. It becomes this actual decree.
It becomes a symbol. I mean, the moment a group claims a natural object, they are layering human meaning and authority and intention onto something that was previously just existing.
Yeah, just minding its own business.
Right. They are taking the chaotic, indifferent natural world
Yeah.
and literally forcing it to carry the weight of human ideology.
And that tension, between the wildness of nature and the rigid structure of human authority is our focus today. So welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We are looking at a document from your sources today that is incredibly brief, highly specific, and honestly quite mysterious. It is essentially just, a few translated lines of text about a flower.
Yeah, it's very short.
But our mission today for you listening is to decode how a group can just invent a reality out of thin air using nothing but a few sentences.
And it serves as this really fascinating micro example of how, a very small amount of text can reveal the underlying mechanics of authority. That is, if you look at the structure of the language rather than just the subject matter itself.
Okay, let's unpack this because we need to lay out the foundational facts first. We are looking at an excerpt titled The Official Flower of Lifechanyuan the Corn Poppy.
Right.
It is authored by a figure named Zwifeng. It's dated August 20, 2024. And there is this very specific note stating the translation was edited by someone named Kinyu.
Yeah, and that's practically all the context we get.
Literally the entire perimeter of the document we have. Author, date, translator, and a title that essentially announces, like, a botanical mascot for an entity called Lifechanyuan. And on its face, it's a simple announcement, but the actual text carries this surprisingly heavy, authoritative weight.
Well, the brevity is exactly what makes it so dense with organizational authority, The very first sentence just sets the structural reality of this whole group. Zwifeng writes, I have decided to designate the corn poppy as the official flower of Lifechanyuan.
I have decided, it's incredibly declarative.
Yeah, very.
Didn't say, we took a vote or the community has generally agreed upon this.
No, not at all. It establishes this singular, centralized authority immediately. Zwifeng is speaking from a position of absolute decision-making power here.
Right.
We aren't looking at a democratic process.
Yeah.
We are looking at a top-down mandate. And, from a sociological perspective, this kind of language tells us a lot about the group's structure.
Oh, for sure.
When a leader uses the phrase, I have decided, to dictate shared reality, it basically establishes them as a figure whose personal cognitive process just becomes the structural reality for the entire group.
It totally reminds me of, corporate mission statements at your own job.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect example.
Right. When leadership suddenly announces our new core value is synergy, they are doing something very similar. They are dictating a shared conceptual reality from the top down. But, I have to push back a little here.
Okay, go ahead.
Why a flower specifically? If you want to project authority, an eagle represents strength. An oak tree represents endurance. When you read a state decree about a symbol, it usually explains the symbolic heavy lifting that the object is doing, right?
Usually, yes.
So what is a corn poppy actually supposed to do for this group? Does the source tell us?
Well, the text gives us a very specific, and I would say highly subjective characterization. It doesn't provide this complex theological breakdown of the poppy's biological traits or anything like that.
Okay.
Instead, it simply instructs the listener to enjoy the flower's Charm and elegance.
Wait, charm and elegance, that's it?
That is literally it.
I mean, that doesn't exactly sound like a foundation for a cohesive spiritual or philosophical movement. Are we sure we aren't, like, reading too much into what might just be a glorified gardening newsletter?
It's a fair question.
Yeah.
But the structural weight of the rest of the text really prevents us from dismissing it as just gardening. By elevating, charm and elegance as the sole defining traits of their official symbol, the author is subtly dictating the cultural tone of the entire organization.
Oh, I see.
We project our values onto our symbols, right? So if the official flower is meant to be charming and elegant, it implies that the members and the environment of Lifechanyuan itself are expected to embody those exact same harmonious, aesthetically pleasing qualities.
It's anthropomorphism. We are taking human social traits because, I mean, usually describe a person at a dinner party as having charm and elegance and forcing a wild plant to wear them.
Exactly.
They aren't looking for a flower that represents fierce independence or unbreakable strength. They want something polite. They want an aesthetic vibe.
Yeah, an aesthetic vibe is a great way to put it. And by establishing that vibe through an official mandate, the leader creates a behavioral expectation. The symbol basically becomes a mirror for the group's desired identity.
Wow.
But the way the author attempts to justify this symbol, that is where the document takes a truly bizarre turn.
Yes. Here's where it gets really interesting, you guys, because while charm and elegance is the only descriptor we get, the text claims there is this massive, robust, logical foundation for this decision. It just completely refuses to show it to us.
Yeah, it's the structural mystery of the omitted text.
It is the most glaring quirk in this entire excerpt provided by the listener. The text explicitly says, I have decided to designate the corn poppy as the official flower of Lifechanyuan for the following reasons. : and then nothing.
Literally a blank space in the logic.
A total void. The very next sentence just picks up and says, based on these 8 reasons, the corn poppy will be honored. Like, we are totally left hanging.
What's fascinating here is that the actual list of the 8 reasons is entirely missing from the source material.
As a reader trying to understand this document, this completely breaks my brain. It's like buying a cookbook that promises to teach you how to bake the perfect cake. But when you turn the page of the recipe, it just says, because the ingredients on the previous page, this cake is delicious.
That's a hilarious comparison, but yeah, it skips the mechanism entirely.
It totally skips it. How does our brain even process a text when the core arguments, like all 8 of them, are just missing?
Well, it actually forces a shift in your cognitive processing. When you are reading a text and the author provides a detailed list of reasons, your brain engages in what psychologists call central route processing.
Central route processing. Okay.
Right. You are evaluating the logic. You are weighing the evidence. If Weifeng had actually listed the 8 reasons, a reader might say, well, I agree with reason 3, but reason 7 seems a bit of a stretch.
Because providing evidence invites critical scrutiny.
Exactly.
If you give me a list, you are basically asking my brain to evaluate the list. You are inviting me to be a critic. You're handing me the tools to disagree with you.
But by omitting the 8 reasons, and look, whether that omission was a formatting error or a deliberate rhetorical device or just an artifact of translation, we don't know. But the psychological effect on the reader is profound.
Because you can't evaluate what isn't there.
Right. You can no longer use central route processing because there is literally no logic to process. So you are forced into peripheral route processing, which relies on heuristics or mental shortcuts. And in this case, the primary heuristic is authority.
So you're saying by showing 0 work, the author actually bypasses our mental firewall.
Exactly. You cannot argue with the 8 reasons because you cannot see them. It transforms the text from a reasoned argument into an absolute declaration.
Wow.
It requires a reader to simply accept the premise that 8 valid reasons exist somewhere, and because they exist, the corn poppy is the official flower.
It's like, think about being a kid and asking your parents why you have to go to bed. If they say, because you need 8 hours of sleep to develop your prefrontal cortex, you might try to argue the science, right? Like, no, I don't.
Yeah, exactly.
But if they just say, because I said so, the debate is over. The authority entirely replaces the explanation. And this document is doing the exact same thing on a structural level.
It demands a level of trust. You are left only with a final decree, and you just have to nod and say, well, there are 8 reasons in a vault somewhere, so it must be official.
Right.
It shifts the document from like a persuasive essay trying to win you over into a mandate informing you of a reality that has already been decided behind closed doors. The unknown actually generates more authority than a flawed explanation would.
That is so wild to think about. And once that reality is established, that this flower is the undeniable symbol based on this unseen, mysterious logic, the text immediately pivots.
It really does.
It moves to ground that highly abstract symbol into a very real physical location. Up until this point, we've just been talking about concepts, right? A guy named Shifeng, an organization called Lifechanyuan, a hypothetical flower, and 8 invisible reasons.
Purely conceptual.
Yeah. But the final sentence anchors all of this in geography. It says, please enjoy the charm and elegance of the corn poppies at Anaheim Lake, the holy pilgrimage site of Lifechanyuan.
Anaheim Lake, the holy pilgrimage site. I mean, this is a fascinating sociological mechanism at play here. The text moves from abstract authority to physical space.
Right.
Because a belief system, no matter how charming or elegant, is fragile if it only exists in the mind. To truly cement an ideology, you need a geographical anchor.
Let's look at that specific phrase, too. Holy pilgrimage site. I mean, the pilgrimage isn't just a vacation. You don't take a pilgrimage to the grocery store.
No, you don't.
It requires intentionality.
A pilgrimage requires physical effort, travel, and a mindset of reverence. By intertwining a specific geographical location like Anaheim Lake with their designated official symbol, the organization is engaging in what we call spatial anchoring.
Spatial anchoring.
Yeah. Human brains are inherently spatial. We understand abstract concepts much better when we can tie them to a physical location. When you ask someone to travel to a specific lake and walk among designated flowers, you are asking them to physically invest in the belief system.
It's basically the sunk cost fallacy applied to spirituality.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to phrase it.
Right. If I just read a PDF about a corn poppy, I haven't invested much, I can just close the cab. But if I buy a plane ticket, travel all the way to Anaheim Lake and walk the grounds, my brain is going to work very hard to convince me that the experience is profoundly meaningful.
Yes, because of the effort it took to get there.
Exactly. It makes the philosophy tactile. You can smell the poppy, you can see the water. It brings the abstract authority of the text into the real world.
Physical movement validates internal belief. It is entirely different to say, we value elegance, versus saying, come to this specific coordinate on the map to experience our holy site. The latter builds a tangible world.
But there is a detail here that we cannot overlook, and it ties back to the very beginning of our source material, the translation note.
Ah, yes, Kinyue.
Right. The document explicitly tells us, translation edited by Kinyu. If this text is being carefully translated and edited from its original language into English, it means this invitation to Anaheim Lake isn't just for a local audience.
All right, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the act of translation reveals the operational ambition of the group. An organization doesn't expend the resources to translate and edit a decree about an official flower and a holy pilgrimage site unless they actively desire an international presence.
They are exporting this reality. Like, it's meant for you, the English-speaking listener.
Exactly. They are inviting a broader, global audience to recognize their symbols and their geography. And the role of Kinyu, the editor of the translation, is crucial to this mechanism.
How so?
Well, translation is rarely just a word-for-word swap, right? It is cultural coding. Kinyu is tasked with taking Vivefen's authoritative tone, the bizarre mystery of the 8 missing reasons, and the sacredness of the Anaheim Lake pilgrimage, and somehow making all of it legible to someone who operates in an entirely different linguistic framework.
Yeah, like how do you even translate charm and elegance across cultures? In one culture, elegance might mean simplicity and quietness. In another, it might mean opulence and bright colors. Kinyu has to bridge that gap and somehow communicate the exact aesthetic vibe Shufeng mandated. It's basically global marketing for a spiritual movement.
That's exactly what it is. It demonstrates that Lifechanyuan does not intend to remain a localized phenomenon. A designated pilgrimage site is designed to draw people inward from the outside.
Right.
So by translating this text, they're casting a net across language barriers. They're offering a prepackaged reality, complete with a symbol, leader, a holy site, and an established aesthetic, to literally anyone willing to accept the premise.
So let's just step back for a second and look at the journey we've taken with this one tiny document. We started with just a simple date and a translation note.
Yeah, very unassuming.
Right. We watched a leader named Shufeng use the raw power of declarative language to claim a wildflower as an official structural symbol. Then we wrestled with the cognitive mechanics of the 8 missing reasons, discovering how hiding the logic actually forces the reader to rely on authority rather than critical thinking.
Which is still blowing my mind, honestly.
Yeah, I know, right? And finally, we arrived at the shores of Anaheim Lake, seeing how a translated invitation to a holy site attempts to ground an abstract ideology into physical, global reality.
It really highlights how groups construct identity. Through careful use of language, they manufacture authority, they assign human values to wild symbols, and they carve out sacred spaces in the physical world to validate those beliefs.
So, what does this all mean for you, listening to this deep dive? Think about the symbols you interact with every single day. The logos on your phone, the flags on your buildings, the corporate jargon in your inbox. Symbols only hold the weight we collectively assign to them.
That's very true.
Nature is entirely wild, but human belief is what gives that wildness a name, a meaning, and an authority. Analyzing even the briefest announcement reviews the entire structural blueprint of how a group desperately wants to be seen by the world.
It really leaves us with a fascinating reflection on the intersection of personal belief and external symbolism. Which actually brings me to a thought I'd like to leave you with as we conclude our analysis today.
Oh, lay it on us.
Consider the wild, untamed nature we discussed at the very beginning. If you had to step into that wildness and designate a single element of nature, a flower, a tree, a stone, an animal, to serve as the official symbol of your own personal philosophy, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good question.
And perhaps more importantly, thinking about the psychological power as the unknown we explored today. Would you meticulously explain your reasons to the world? Or would you keep your logic a mystery, letting only the charm and elegance of your chosen symbol speak for itself?